What sort of things should collectors know when they're buying antiquities that are from Syria?
What the events of the last decade or so have taught us is that any time an antiquity or a previously unpublished item comes from either the Middle East in general or even any war-torn area of conflict, Cambodia, for example, or an area that might have some kind of internal strife, whether it's Libya, Lebanon, or now Syria, that they should pay extra special attention to the documentation, the provenance, the background of the items. Pieces of significance for cultural heritage do not just materialize after 2,000 years. They have either been somewhere in a published collection, a private collection, a museum, or they have recently come out of the ground. There are no other options.
So if they've recently come out of the ground, then the chances are they should be treated with suspicion?
If they have recently come out of the ground, then they are illegal. There's no chances are. If an item comes out of the ground in any country recently without an export stamp from that country, it is by definition illegal.
Some people will argue, with everything going on in Syria, with all the death, this relatively feels like a victimless crime. What would you say to them?
To the concept of victimless crime, I respond that is an oxymoron of the highest order. There is no such thing as a victimless crime, and certainly not here. You can engage in all the exquisite rationalizations you want, and you can pretend and self-deceive that, oh, I'm keeping this item safe for posterity purposes, and eventually one day I will donate this piece to a museum. Of course, I'll get a very sweet tax break when I do that, and not only am I keeping it safe, but I enjoy that item. I appreciate that item more than, say, the average Syrian or the average Iraqi. And my response to that is, first, how dare you? But secondly, to whom do we owe the fact that these treasures still exist today? To whom do we owe the fact that the treasures of Nineveh and Nimrud and Karsabad, fabled cities from the Old Testament, still exist? The cooperation of three different ideologies that in this one respect have joined together in the protection. And these people, I'm talking about uneducated, security guards, people who didn't go to school, who didn't go to college, who don't have a degree in art history, yet they understand viscerally, universally, they understand that this stuff matters. And it matters to them far more than it ever could matter to a gallery owner on Madison Avenue or a Bond Street dealer in London. We're not just talking about cultural heritage. We're not just talking about saving a bunch of rocks. We are talking about humanity, and let me explain. We should understand that when you destroy cultural heritage, all that is left of a people, you are, in effect, destroying their cultural identity. All that is left then is to destroy the people themselves. We should not forget the lessons of history. We should not forget that the Holocaust followed the razing of old Warsaw. We should not forget that the atrocities in Cambodia and the killing fields followed the destruction of countless mosques and churches and pagodas. When you don't care about the cultural heritage of a people and you don't care about the identity of a people, you don't care about the people themselves.
What can be done to stop that?
At each node of the chain, from the looter to the smuggler to the dealer to the ultimate collector, each node requires a different strategy in order to combat it. At the looter level, I mean, clearly there needs to be improved security at the sites, as well as, improvement in all the internal governance organizations that are required to feed and house and clothe and keep safe the people and provide a different means of income. But for the smuggler, increased border protection, increased scrutiny at borders. Remember, a piece of alabaster or a 2,000-year-old ceramic isn't going to be identified by drug-sniffing dogs or metal detectors. So they are going to get through borders, but increased and improved border security is certainly a way to stop the smugglers. In terms of the dealers and the gallery owners, very little other than fear of criminal prosecution is going to stop them. In terms of the ultimate collectors, one hopes that recognition that they are funding terrorism and the shame attendant to that recognition and the public awareness of that fact would deter many museums and collectors from ultimately buying.
How much of a moneymaker is this for ISIS?
ISIS, as they have been wont to do in everything, has institutionalized antiquities trafficking. Finally, after a decade of this undeniable reality, the United Nations Security Council passed a resolution this past February of 2015 condemning ISIS and al-Qaeda for the use of illegal antiquities and funding their terror. The Financial Action Task Force of the G7 determined that ISIS has raised tens of millions of dollars in antiquities trafficking. We should understand that that was from Syria alone.